So here comes another shitty YouTube Tesla video where I, talk about my Tesla and how great it is. Um, I'm making this video because the post that I made about my wrap received a whole 6 upvotes on the Tesla Motors subreddit. My mom also liked my Instagram post about my wrap. I get questions about it all the time, and when I started to do it, all I did was watch a couple YouTube videos from wrap shops where they went, kind of piece by piece, and I watched and figured out what to do. There are some gotchas and a lot of tips that I learned along the way. Typically, when I started one side, I would do that side wrong first, and then when I went to the other side, it was a lot easier because I knew what to look out for. So I'm going to go through what to look out for pretty much the entire car. So yeah, stick with me and use this referral code when you get a Tesla. Use this referral code. Use the referral code. Use the referral code. Use the referral code. Use the referral code. So here it is, all completed. It took me about 2 weeks to finish. I had my brother help me with the front and rear bumpers, and without somebody else, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. If I had to do this again, I would do pretty much all of the other panels, and I would pay somebody to do just the front and rear bumpers because those are definitely the hardest parts. If you can find a shop that'll just do those, you can pretty much breeze through the rest of it in, I don't know, a week. So I initially ordered 55 feet of satin flip psychedelic wrap from Metro Restyling, and they called me and said that they had two offcuts from another order that they could send me. If you do this, I recommend getting it all on one spool, because I think even though I oriented all of my arrows correctly, I have them all going this way all the way around the car. There seem to be subtle discolorations in some of the panels from the second roll. After that initial 55-foot order, I ended up ordering 20 more feet because I screwed up so much. So I would say order 75 feet and get it from one roll, and that should be all the vinyl that you'll need to wrap a Model 3. The hood is probably the easiest part. Do the hood first if you want like a false sense of confidence in, approaching the rest of the job, because it's just basically a flat panel. It's very, very easy. What I found out was when you open the hood, there's a little area up here that contacts the wiper blade. So I put like 2 extra layers of vinyl right here so that maybe it won't cut through and wear out depending on how much you open your frunk. So when you do these mirror caps, you can do them in one piece. You're going to have to heat it up quite a bit and stretch it on this side. It's a lot easier to put the vinyl down on the mirror cap, and then you can take the whole mirror cap off to tuck it underneath. To do that, you just pull out on these corners and you'll hear it pop, and then you can lift upwards. There's 2 clips on the top here that need to come unclipped, and the whole thing just lifts up. So you kind of like pry outward and then lift up, and the cap will come off. So for the doors on each side, I highly recommend taking this trim panel off. It's very easy. All you have to do is open it up, roll your window down, and then just, if you lift up from this side, it just, kind of peels off. It's held on by a little rubber lip. So you just kind of lift it up, peel it off, and then you can push your vinyl pretty much up against the edge, and it'll look perfect when you put the trim back on. For these pillars, I've seen in one of the videos, I think the shop actually used a big piece of vinyl that was, a giant rectangle that went all the way from there down to there and up and back, so that they didn't have to do really any stretching. You don't really need to do that. I just used a 6-inch width piece of vinyl, ran it up over this, and it, really didn't need any stretching at all. To cut it correctly, I put knifeless tape directly on this edge okay, running all along the glass. And then I put knifeless tape directly on this edge, pretty much the point of this trim. You can feel it with your finger. And then what I did was I pushed down with the vinyl so that it was in this little crevice before peeling off the knifeless tape. That allowed me to, it gave me just the right amount of material to tuck underneath this weather seal and underneath this weather seal using one of the sharper tools. So you use this tool and this tool. You use this one to pry the weather seal back a little bit, and then you use this one to kind of like jam it down until the vinyl's behind the seal. The fenders, definitely remove the camera. There's a video on YouTube that you can easily find. All you really have to do is pop the push pins out of your wheel well liner, reach your hand up there. There's 2 tabs, one here, boop, boop. Push those in, you'll hear it click, and you can kind of tilt it out a little bit. The camera has to be pushed down with quite a bit of force because there's 2 stationary tabs on the top, so it has to pivot a little bit. I found that it was easiest if I pushed it down and then used a little plastic pry tool to push even further on the top of the camera housing so that it would come right out. For the front bumper, you should definitely remove it so that you can tuck everything, more effectively. When you remove the front bumper, you can also remove the headlights very easily. It's just 2 10mm bolts. One is under here, and the other is going to be like over here. So you just pop those out, and then you can slide the headlights forward. I didn't even disconnect them. All I did was slide them far enough forward that I could tuck the vinyl underneath behind the headlights. The front bumper has 3 inlays. Some people I've seen do it in 2 inlays or 1 inlay, but I did it with 3 inlays, and that made it a bit easier. So I inlaid up here, right underneath, going, through here. Oh, it's hard to use my fingers while I'm filming. Anyways, do it up here. I did an inlay all through here, and then I did another inlay right here. You can see this seam, but unless you get like this close, pretty much nobody's gonna notice it. It made it so much easier to just do those inlays and then do the rest of the bumper as one giant piece. Heat up the center part of your vinyl so that you can pull as hard as you can and kind of stretch that center part out, and then the extra upper and lower parts won't have as much material that you need to absorb. So if you're stretching that center out, it removes a lot of those fingers automatically from the top and the bottom, because this is a smaller area than this area. But back to the point I made earlier, I would have rather paid somebody to do this bumper. So these sills were pretty easy. I did the sill as one piece and the rear fender as another piece. There's a small seam right there that you can see. Some shops in the videos that I've seen, they use one giant piece, but I was starting to run out of vinyl, so I kind of had to do it this way. What I did was take, I think 9-inch piece. No. It was 12-inch piece of vinyl, and tacked it down there. And then what you do is you start to tuck it underneath with the back of your squeegee. You get it as close to this under tray as you can, and then you hold the squeegee up against the edge and run it down the length of it while cutting. So it would be like this. You hold the blade up against the bottom of the squeegee as you run it along, and that will give you the exact amount of material you need to tuck it underneath this rain tray or the battery tray under here. So this little seam can be lifted downwards, pushed downwards with a tucking tool, and you can just tuck the vinyl underneath this tray. On the inside, all I did was put some knifeless tape right in this indent right pretty much at the, I don't know, apex of it. And I ran that all the way down into the back of it. This rear fender, you should smooth out and glass this whole section first, all the way down to there, and then stretch it vertically to finish off this area. You can kind of use a tool to push this fake side light out while you tuck it underneath. So that makes it really easy. Also, there's, after you remove the taillights, there's a 10 millimeter nut or a 10 millimeter bolt right here on the top of the bumper. And that allows you to kind of pull this outward. Oh, you can see where I cut a little bit too close, or where the vinyl tore. Anyways, that allows you to peel the bumper outwards a bit so you can tuck vinyl underneath. The trunk you can do in 2 pieces, but I ended up doing in 3 because I was running out of vinyl and I was hesitant to order more. So definitely order more than enough vinyl, or else y'all start to panic and do stuff like that. So most people do an inlay down here, and then they get it, you know, up as close as they can to the lights and everything. And then they do another piece. I actually started to screw up and couldn't, you know, flatten it for this part. So I have a seam that I made with knifeless tape that goes right underneath this spoiler part. Nobody's ever really noticed it, and it looks kind of like it should be there, but it is, you know, a flaw to watch out for. When you do the rear bumper, definitely remove the taillights. It's really easy, just 2 8 millimeter nuts, undo the clip, and then pull it out. That'll give you access to that 10 millimeter bolt that I talked about earlier, and it also allows you to bend vinyl up over this edge to tuck it easier. The same kind of concept applies to the rear bumper as to the front bumper. You have to put it down and stretch the central part out horizontally and vertically to absorb most of the extra material that'll be created up here. The same technique that I talked about underneath the door sills can be used to cut the vinyl to tuck underneath this trim piece. Just rest the blade up against your squeegee tool as you tuck it, and it'll cut it pretty much just to the right amount. These are pretty much the tools that I use to wrap the Model 3. I got some squeegees here. These, remember to keep them wet, because when I first started off, I was applying a lot of pressure and squeegeeing out my vinyl after laying it down, and I didn't pay attention, and it dried out a bit, and now I have a couple of scratches on the hood. If you look at it in the right light, you'll notice them. So always keep those wet. Get some of these. These are just magnets to hold the vinyl against the car while you peel the backing off. Definitely get some tweezers, because there's gonna be little areas where you're gonna have to peel little tiny bits off, or you can use it to reposition the vinyl in fine areas. This is knifeless tape. Get knifeless tape. There are a lot of areas where it's pretty much 100% necessary. I didn't cut any of the vinyl against the car unless I absolutely had to, and I was very careful when I did it. If you lay knifeless tape down before you do that, you can avoid pretty much all the scratches and cuts that you might get. These tools, I got them in a big pack off Amazon, and they're pretty flimsy. I broke one of them using the edge to tuck underneath. It was actually this one. I don't know, one of the sides is actually snapped. If I push it hard enough, it'll just peel back. But yeah, get these. They're great for tucking. This one's pretty sharp, so you can push stuff in to weather seals and everything. But be careful, because they are pretty flimsy. I used a butane torch instead of a heat gun when I had to heat and stretch smaller areas. This worked a lot better for getting wrinkles out, I found, than a heat gun, because you could spot heat tinier areas with this. So I recommend that. Also, there's no cord to deal with. It's a lot easier. This is just, you know, a razor, pretty much like an X-Acto knife or whatever, a box cutter. So yeah, just get that to cut the vinyl and you should be good to go. If you try to do this yourself and you've never done a wrap before, I think one of the best things you can do is kind of accept that it's not going to be perfect and it's going to take quite a bit of time. I was lucky, you know, that I have another car that I can drive while working on it, but I do know that in a couple weeks the front end's going to be all chipped up because the Bay Area roads are trash. So I mean, just keep that in mind. You know, it's a car. It's not going to be perfect the first time you wrap something, and it's not going to last forever.